Almost 11 here on the West Coast. Owen is out there on the East Coast locking it down in Penn State, but we are live here on the Voice of College Football Network talking Oregon Ducks. Owen is somewhere in Happy Valley after Oregon's 30-24 win over the Penn State Nittany Lions. Ducks come out, it's the biggest game of the season to this point, and meet the level of Penn State in an absolute thriller, a double overtime classic. Oregon, it's a defensive game early. They pull away. Penn State comes back. Oh, and you were on the boots on the ground in Happy Valley watching this one in person. I just want to hear your instant thoughts and takeaways from this, absolute thriller of a game.
Yeah, man. I mean, the first place I go is just what a team Oregon has, and what a team of young players, what a team of guys who can react and bounce back. It's no secret that, the three players in this game who are the most important on offense, not named Dante Moore, were true freshmen. I think the fact that, these coaches didn't have to have this game to prove how good they were. They've been saying how good they were. D'Erl and Jordan Davison, Rashad Samples called them ahead of their time in the future of this program back in fall camp. DeCorian Moore has had the trust of everybody in this program since before he arrived. Since he started blocking and earning that trust. And that's what comes in a game like here. These guys stepped up in a big moment. Dante Moore showed his flashes, and Drew Aller made a mistake. It's exactly what we talked about. Ducks stopped the run, just allowed 1.8 yards in the first half, but they dominated on the ground in the first half and only put up 3 points. I think to bounce back from that and win in double overtime like that is really unbelievable. It's a testament just to what this program is, what Dan Lanning has built. The confidence and the mentality that he's instilled in these guys that he talks about every week, and they sound like cliches, but it's nights like tonight that prove him right, man.
Like you said, it sounds like cliches. We continue to say it, after every step that this program takes. It's the program that Dan Lanning's built here that really has got it to this point in terms of what he's done on the recruiting trail and in the transfer portal, just, building up this staff, this roster, everything that has become what his Oregon football program is. It really is very impressive. And, they win games like this because of what Dan Lanning has built and, the way he can motivate his team. And this week's mantra was death by 1,000 cuts. They were going to, slowly chip away at this Penn State team. And you could see it out there. When it felt like results weren't really there in the first half, when you couldn't finish drives out, when Atticus Sappington was missing field goals, when you weren't converting on fourth down, and you only have 3 points in the first half. But it just shows the will of this team, that they kept fighting. And even when, Jordan Davison punches in that touchdown, there are "Let's Go Ducks" chants coming out in Beaver Stadium that you can hear on the TV broadcast, wow. In this 110,000, in whiteout crowd. But it felt like the game was over at that point almost. And, Dan Lanning said he was doing this as like, cuts, just more cuts. It wasn't like it's over after that point. But as a viewer, it felt like it was over at that point almost. And for Penn State to bounce back and then Oregon to be able to, they give up the lead. It's going to overtime. It feels like Penn State has all the momentum on their side. The crowd has completely gotten back into it, and to just shut that down. And 2 plays, really what it is in double overtime. It's 2 plays, and it's your biggest playmakers making plays at those times.
Yeah, man, I just want to run through some of the momentum shifts in this game. You think about that Noah Whittington fumble that was overturned, and how quickly it is that you can react from that. And we were talking to Dan Lanning, and he said while they were reviewing it, it went to a commercial break. They were already on the next play. They were already planning. They weren't looking at defense. We're looking at how do we punch this in. And we talk a lot about what Dan Lanning looks like in crunch situations, and they go 5 of 7 on fourth down. Those are the big moments in this game. And we go back to games like Washington 2 years ago, where we were talking about his decision to go for it, not to kick, and saying how, did that ultimately kill the game? I think what tonight shows is that this guy's matured and he understands when to kick, but he also has full confidence just in his ability to make the decision and his ability to make the decision to go on fourth down, and in his players who executed 5 out of 7 times. Looked fantastic after really struggling on third down in this game, and made the difference, man.
Yeah, as we look at this one, it was really a defensive battle in the first half From watching it on TV, it seemed like the Oregon was really winning at the line of scrimmage, especially against what Penn State was trying to do up front. They really couldn't get their running game going with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton at all. As someone who was there, watching this in person, what did it look like in that first half, and the way that Oregon was able to really shut down this Penn State rushing attack through the first three quarters until they finally started to kind of find that momentum late in the game and be able to tie it up there.
Yeah, man, a lot of this game was the difference between going laterally and going vertically. In the first half, Penn State went vertically. They tried to stick Nick Singleton and Katron Allen through the gut. They gave those guys direct snaps. They were trying to beat guys like Amari Washington inside, and it wasn't working. There were great linebackers. Bryce Betcher would come up and fit the run really well. And then just to kind of get into it, the difference in the second half is they start going side to side. They start getting Benya on jet sweeps and motions, and they start moving it wide. There's a moment in the first half where Aller, I think he sees, I think it's Kyron Hudson, manned up with Bryce Betcher in man coverage. He motions across the formation, and then he doesn't use him. He waits too long. He's covered. He gets safety help. That was a moment where Penn State could have blown it open. As good as a player as Bryce Betcher is, these Penn State wide receivers are better. They're faster. He could have had a catch there. And then the second half, they start going lateral. They start giving the ball, and that's where Oregon starts to really struggle. That's where they score their overtime touchdown that looks like it might have ended the Ducks' hopes here. But they're able to conquer that. They're able to overcome. And I think that's, again, like a testament. You look at what this team is able to do to react in game. We talked about that with the Oregon State game, how they're able to adjust their run defense in game and fit it better. It's really impressive. That's the run was the story in this game.
Absolutely. Oregon was able to kind of get things going, especially in that second half with Hill Jr. I know just the 1-2 punch of him and Davison, that was the cover story for the Emerald this week for the kind of the game day edition. And that's exactly how things played out. It was really Hill that kind of got things going in the second half on offense. Oregon had success on offense, but Hill was the one that really unlocked things, was able to start gashing runs for 20 yards, getting into the secondary, over 80 yards for him on this game. Led both teams in total rush yards, and then bringing Jordan Davison in for what at the time looked like a dagger touchdown. The two freshmen for this team, and you mentioned like before, DeCorian Moore too, some really big plays in this game. Just the trust that Dan Lanning has in these freshmen. What is it like seeing that in a moment like this? Seeing these freshmen perform, in this environment that you got to see today.
I was really impressed, especially. They come out after Penn State scores and hand Hill the ball 3 times. That was the moment where I was like, okay, like they're really rocking with these guys. Like they've been telling us that they understand, but shout out Tyson Alger who just waved at me. Where I was like, okay, they're gonna give him the ball in this moment. They've been giving him the ball. They work together really well. Davison sprung a block after actually missing a block earlier in the game that got Hill for one of those 24-yard runs, which they had a couple. But when they hand Hill the ball 3 times, when you really need to get a drive going, that's when I say, hey, they understand how talented these guys are, but these guys understand at the moment. They work it out. They really just understand. Alec Dietz, you want to come really loud for a second? Okay, we got Alec Dietz from the registered guard here. You got to put this in here. Okay. We're just talking about the game here. We're talking about Hill Jr. and Jordan Davison and just what it takes. When did you realize that they have the trust in these guys?
Game one. They had that double running back set in game 1. So this was definitely a different test, right? You're like, okay, they did it against Montana State. They did it against Oklahoma State. But were they going to do it against Penn State? And they did. And both those freshmen came up big.
Awesome. Get a sleep, Ben. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay. See ya. Yeah, really impressed. I was really impressed by Dante.
Stopping by here for the show.
These two, and I want to get to Dante more because we'll talk about these 2 freshman running backs. But this kid is 20 years old. He was 18 at UCLA when he threw 9 picks in the season and transferred to Oregon. He sat behind Dylan Gabriel. He sat on the bench in that Big Ten championship game. Watched Oregon beat Penn State in a game that was a lot like this, where and this is what my game story gets into. But you look at this and you say, hey, there are explosive moments here, but who's going to make a mistake? And it was Drew Aller, and Dante Moore understands that. He understands it's what Lennon keeps saying: get 5,000 cuts. And I was just so impressed by Dante Moore's composure. He kept getting hit. He scrambled, and maybe this kid doesn't know how to slide with his head down yet. And it worried me because I was down on the field seeing him get hit in the head. And the fact that he's able to get back up and make these plays and really lead this team and sit with him in the post-game press conference and hear about what it's like to evolve from a guy who is my age is pretty wild.
Yeah, it was what we talked about on Monday, and it was something that honestly, as the game kind of wore on, it stood out to me, was that I think the quarterback position was one of the biggest advantages that the Ducks had in this game.
Yeah, you said it.
It wasn't that Aller was necessarily, hurting this team all the time. That interception late obviously does very, it ends the game, but Dante Moore just, making plays, and it's what Lanning said after the game. Those crunch time situations, those big time situations, where do you want the ball? Whose hands do you want the ball in? And that answer is Dante Moore, because you just trust him out there. And that's why they're going to him. He carries the ball 10 times today, almost a career high. After last week, he sets a career high, in terms of the yards on the ground. And you've seen him just have to create in some of these moments. And it's really flashed how special of a player he can be. As Isaiah World did hold denied Dennis Sutton on that one that Dante rolled out, hit Kenyon Sadiq. But, it's phenomenal play by Dante Moore there. And then another one in overtime, getting around Dennis Sutton to then hit Gary Bryant, had the big one to Decorian Moore as well. Just the plays out of the pocket, and he operated really well within the offense, but it was the plays out of the pocket that, took this game to the next level and really were able to, keep drives alive, keep the Ducks going. And you saw that from Aller at times as well, but that was the thing at the end of the game. You get pressure on him and he throws it up. And that's what we were saying, was that we saw it last year in the Big Ten championship game, where Aller has a big arm and can make some of these throws, but at the same time, he can get aggressive and make mistakes, and Dylan Thieneman takes advantage of it. It was something I asked Dan about last week, before this game. I said, because you saw what you're able to do against Aller last year, because he's a guy who is aggressive and likes to take shots downfield. You're gonna be aggressive with that ball production, and you saw it there at the end. Dylan Thieneman, an incredible play. Heads up. It's not even really his guy at that point. He's supposed to be letting him over the top to the safety, but he sees the ball coming his way and decides, well, why not leap up and end this thing with an interception? So.
Yeah, I'm gonna read you a little bit of what Dylan Thieneman said about that play really quick. He said, the last play, I was just pushing through the zone. I saw the tight end on the wheel, so I was carrying the tight end a little bit, and then I was going to drop into the safety that was over above, and then I just got my eyes back to the quarterback, and the ball was right there. So I was like, I got to get that. So I picked it off, and it didn't feel real in the moment, and then I just kind of got up and started running. I didn't really know what I was doing, and then everybody was rushing the field, so it was very cool. And that's a guy who really, I asked him about this, Tuesday. Didn't get a chance to talk to him about it tonight, but has done a lot of the work in pulling this secondary that had really never played starts together before this season. He's done a lot of that work in bringing these guys together. It's a process that he said, it takes a lot of connection on and off the field. These are quotes from Tuesday. And I think you really saw that tonight, because he made mistakes. He admitted this. He gets flipped by the hips on the Kyron Hudson touchdown, where it's the single high safety, and he can't do that.
Ross going over the top on the post, right? That's a tough one to try to play as a single high safety, or as a high. He wasn't single high, but as a high safety, when you got a guy running straight at you with like 15 yards to make a cut.
But yeah, and he goes in post game like, hey, I made these mistakes, but I still understand that I can make the game winning play. That's for me really what the ethos of this Oregon identity is. It's just that they really do. We go back to cliches. They take it play by play. They don't overreact to a touchdown, to a pick, to any of that, and they're able to stay so composed, which is so impressive. As to a team that's got so many true freshmen, so many guys that didn't play for this team last year. That was so fantastic. They're able to be so phenomenal just because of that ability to flush a play.
Yeah, and in those situations, Lanning really trusts his guys to be playmakers. He says, the environment is one thing; it could affect the game, but you got to have your players make plays on the field, and that's what his guys did. And it's because he puts them his coaching staff puts them in those situations, has them ready for it throughout practice, and then it's just going out there and executing once it's game day, and we saw that today because you get into double overtime, and it's the environment is raucous out there at Penn State. It is, everybody's going crazy, and then but when it comes down to it, Dante Moore makes a play, Dylan Thieneman makes a play, and you're able to come out of there with a win. So
yeah, man. I wanna get to Bryce Betcher here. I'm probably gonna take 5 or 10 more minutes, and then try to go get some sleep, write a story. But
yeah, Owen does have to make his way back to Pittsburgh and then back to Eugene by tomorrow.
We got class on Monday.
We do have class on Monday.
And so let's get to Betcher because he was for 9 tackles in the first half. Gets one in the second half, one off his
flying around again
11 against Oregon State last week. His career high he got against Washington, and I think against Oregon State last year. That was 11. In this game, he gets 4 first quarter tackles. Really, kind of cools off, on the stat sheet in the second quarter. But he finishes this game with 12 tackles. It's a career high for this kid who's got just a phenomenal story. And then the quote that really stood out to me from him post game is he talks about the fact that Oregon's in pads. We don't watch practice obviously, but he tells us Oregon's in pads Monday through Thursday. And some guys think let me pull the direct quote for you because I don't want to butcher it for him. Give me a moment here. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So he goes. It's all. We're relentless, man. I've been saying it from the beginning. It's all about culture. We build an excellent culture here in Oregon. A lot of the new guys that transfer in are just a part of building that. We're relentless. He keeps coming back to this idea. Most physical football team always wins, and it starts in practice. We're in pads Monday through Thursday. Some guys think it's ridiculous, but it shows up when it needs to. This guy is somebody that his teammate Tatum Tuioti called crazy, but also a phenomenal leader. After that Oregon State game, I never really showed up. What a story, man. I can't imagine growing up in Eugene and having a career like this.
Betcher just continues to come up his biggest games in the biggest moments for this, or his biggest moments in the biggest games for this team, against Oregon State, against Washington, on the road at Penn State. Whenever they're in the biggest situation, Bryce Betcher continues to come through for this team and deliver as a linebacker. And like you said, with that quote, like Betcher said, it just speaks to the culture of this team. And going back to what we talked about last week when we talked to Bryce Betcher ahead of that Oregon State game, when he talked about, sitting back in a lawn chair after practice and watching watching other guys put in that extra work that he would then, when he was a safety on special teams that he was putting in to get him to where he is now, where he's, a starting linebacker, the heart of this defense. That's that work right there. That's that work that Monday through Thursday we're in pads showing up on the field on Saturday. That's that extra 20 minutes of work after practice showing up on Saturday. It's all that stuff that creates that culture around Dan Lanning's program where, guys just do want to work harder and they do want to put in that extra effort, do more, do extra, because they want to be the best football players they can be and give it all for this team. And time and time again, Dan Lanning continues to put those results on the field. I was surprised. I didn't even realize that this is his first overtime game during his 4 years at Oregon. But
we were sitting in the hotel last night. Sorry, and I told our photographer Saj, who's sitting in the back of the car here, waiting for me to finish the podcast very nicely. I was like, oh man, like we've never seen Oregon in an overtime game. Isn't that weird? And I said so we're live on the podcast. I said I said last night, like I was like, oh, isn't it weird we've never seen Oregon in an overtime game? We're watching Oregon State in overtime. I was like, oh well, I guess we're gonna see that now, right?
First time
we saw it. First time since 2018, Washington. Pretty crazy. Thanks. We're gonna wrap this up, I promise. And yeah, you look at this, and I want to go big picture just a little bit. Oregon's been in the Big Ten for 2 years. It's got 2 signature wins over Big Ten giants in the regular season.
Yeah.
And I think you can't say anything but Oregon is an absolute powerhouse. In this new era of college football, the Ducks really understand how to build a team in the NIL era and the transfer portal era. In this time in college football where it's about building a team that's composed of development and of guys who have experience. I'm just curious what the next step is, but because the Ducks got to this high last year, they beat Ohio State at home, and then they got through the rest of the season, but they weren't able to take the next step. They weren't able to win the next game in the playoffs. And I'm so curious to see, and I have absolute faith that they have a way to take the next step. That they will figure it out. I can't wait to see what that step is.
Yeah, I think those next steps for this program happen in December and January. Those are not, Dan Lanning's not taking steps in September, October, and November anymore. His steps are elevating this team to a national championship level. That's where they almost really were last year. I really felt like they were the second best team in the country behind Ohio State. Just kind of got caught in a wrong part of the bracket there. That's the goal for this team. It's a national championship, and it's going to be every season as long as Dan Lanning continues to, have this team where it is right now. We're going to get out of here just in a few minutes here so that Owen can make it back to Eugene so that we can go to class when we do have that starting on Monday. But just before we do, a bit of a crazy day around college football today. Penn State goes down to Oregon, obviously, but also LSU loses, number 4 team in the country. Number 5, Georgia loses to Alabama. So, when Oregon heads into this next set of rankings, do you think the Ducks are, going to be right now? Miami's number 2. They were off this week. Ohio State was able to pull out the win over Washington. Where do you think the Ducks fall in these next rankings?
No lower than number 3. I think it's hard to see them go at number 1. Even this is a phenomenal win. It was a close one. And Ohio State, even though it looked a little bit shaky in that win at Washington, they pulled out a tough win. And we know is a really tough place to play. I will be doing my bracket here in who knows how many hours for the student media poll, but I will. I will probably land of number 2 because just because of what we're talking about here, just because this is such a phenomenal win, and when you're talking about programs and you're looking at who's the strongest program and who's the strongest team, I think it's tough. It's really tough to argue against Oregon. It's tough to unseat reigning national champion number 1 team that hasn't lost yet. Ducks are close. There's definitely an argument.
The Ducks are close. That's what we're looking for. A lot of arguments. It's going to be we got a big game coming up here. The next one, Oregon, is going to be at home for Indiana in a couple weeks. They got a bye week this next week, but don't worry, we will be here each of the next couple Mondays talking Oregon Ducks football on the Voice of College Football Network. That's going to do it all for us tonight. My name is John Evans. As always, my co-host Owen Murray, live from Penn State.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I just want to shout some thank yous to some incredible people who really support student journalism. Austin Oda's in the comments here. He's really fantastic. Thanks, Austin. Alec and Tyson, who sat with me at the game today. Everybody from the Daily Herald who helps post. Tarek, who edited the story. Isabella, Anna, everybody who was doing the socials. Lori Shantz and Brianna Maranthus, who got me water. And everybody who's just been so phenomenal in supporting student journalism. It feels so awesome that we're able to do this, that I'm able to be here and write the story, because there's a lot of stuff in the story that's on the Daily Herald right now that I don't get if I'm not here.
Yeah.
I'm just very thankful, very excited, fired up.
Absolutely. Some sage words from Owen there. We'll be back here on Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific time, talking Oregon football, mostly talking about this game. Oregon has a bye week coming up, but lots to talk about from this one. We'll be back here on Monday at 5 p.m. And then after that, getting ready for Indiana, another big game for the Ducks here. That'll do it for us here tonight on the Voice of College Football Network. My name is John Evans. As always, my co-host Owen Murray. We will see you guys here next time.
Thanks.